At 29, I found myself standing at a crossroads, reflecting on the winding path my life had taken. The memories of my past relationships loomed large, especially the stark contrast between my time with Darren and my more recent chapter with Trevor. Darren had been a storm, unpredictable, chaotic, and emotionally draining. He had a way of making me feel small, as though I were constantly chasing his approval but never quite measuring up. Our relationship was a relentless cycle of highs and lows, leaving me exhausted and questioning my worth. When I finally mustered the courage to leave him, I swore to myself that I would never again allow love to consume me in such a destructive way. So when I met Trevor at a party a few years later, he seemed like the answer to everything I had been searching for. He was stable, successful, and grounded, everything Darren wasn't. He exuded an air of security that I found intoxicating, and I convinced myself that this was the kind of love that would finally bring me peace. In the beginning, my relationship with Trevor felt like a fresh start. I was determined to present myself as independent and self-sufficient. I had a decent job and was secretly saving money, wanting to prove to myself, and to him, that I could stand on my own 2 feet. But beneath that carefully constructed facade, I was acutely aware of the financial safety net Trevor provided. He had a way of making me feel secure, and I began to rely on that security more than I cared to admit. Over time, though, I noticed a subtle shift in our dynamic. The intimacy that had once felt effortless started to wane, replaced by something unspoken yet undeniable. Trevor began to expect sexual favors in exchange for his financial support. It was never explicitly stated, but the implication was clear, and it left me feeling uneasy. I tried to brush it aside, convincing myself that this was just how relationships worked, that compromise was a necessary part of maintaining stability. But things took a turn for the worse when I quit my job. The demands of my role had become overwhelming, and the pressure had reached a breaking point. One day, I simply couldn't take it anymore. I walked out, feeling a mix of relief and dread. Relief because, for a brief moment, the crushing weight of my inadequacy had been lifted, and dread because I knew I would have to hide my unemployment from Trevor. As the days passed, my dependence on him grew heavier, and I could feel the balance of our relationship shifting in a way that left me increasingly vulnerable. The warmth between us turned to tension, our conversations becoming strained. One evening, we sat down for a talk, and the unspoken frustrations that had been simmering beneath the surface finally erupted. Trevor's words were sharp, cutting through me like a blade. He was frustrated, resentful even, of my lack of contribution. His tone carried an unmistakable finality, a brutal honesty that I hadn't been prepared to face. It was a wake-up call, a moment of clarity that forced me to confront the reality of our relationship. We were living in 2 different worlds, each with our own expectations of what a partnership should look like. I had wanted to be seen as an equal, but Trevor saw me as a dependent, someone who relied on him for everything. The realization was painful, but it was also undeniable. When Trevor finally ended our relationship, I was left in shock. His words were blunt and unsparing. He needed a partner, not someone who leaned on him financially. The sting of his rejection was unbearable, sending me into a tailspin of desperation. I tried everything to win him back, playing on his jealousy, using seduction, even pleading with him to give us another chance. But the more I tried, the more distant he became. My heart sank as I realized that my efforts were futile. I had lost him, and with him, the stability I had come to depend on. With nowhere else to turn, I moved in with Nash, Darren's brother. It was a decision born of necessity, but it came with its own set of complications. Nash had his own expectations, his own lifestyle, and I struggled to adapt to the new reality of living under his roof. It felt like stepping into a minefield, where every misstep could lead to conflict. I spent my days searching for a new job, trying to rebuild my life from the ground up, but the weight of my circumstances felt suffocating. I was adrift, caught between the remnants of my past and the uncertainty of my future. As time went on, I was forced to confront some uncomfortable truths about myself. I had spent so much time focusing on what I needed from my relationships that I had never stopped to consider what I was bringing to them. I had relied on Trevor without fully acknowledging the consequences of my dependence. And now, standing on my own, I saw how entitled I had been. It was a hard pill to swallow, but an essential one. I realized that my expectations of love and partnership had been skewed. I had fallen into a pattern of seeking security and stability without considering the emotional toll it took on both of us. The transactional nature of my relationship with Trevor had left me feeling hollow, and I knew I needed to break free from that cycle. Through this painful journey, I learned that true self-reliance and mutual respect are the cornerstones of a healthy relationship. I reflected on my past, recognizing that the lessons I had learned were not just about love, but about my responsibility as an individual. I had grown from this experience, and though I still had a long way to go, I was determined to forge a new path, one built on independence and emotional integrity. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long time I was ready to stand on my own 2 feet.